Welcome at a new edition of Botcasters. Today with Professor Xavier Vilasis from Spain, Barcelona, or actually Barcelona, Spain. Welcome, Xavier.
Thank you, Doron. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
And please introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Xavier Vilasis. I'm full professor at La Salle, Universitat Ramon Llull. I'm leading a research group that is called Smart Society. Big name, but my main research interests are related to artificial intelligence. I've been doing this. Actually, I started working artificial intelligence in a private company 30 years ago. Oh my God, that's a lot of time. And that's so long. And I've been pursuing and I've been following the evolution of AI during all these times. Yeah, it was so good to accept your invitation. Thank you very much, Aaron.
You're welcome. And we met in Barcelona a couple months ago, and you know, everybody is saying, "Oh, AI, it's hot and happening, it's new." But you just mentioned, you started working in AI 30 years ago, and it's actually been around longer than that. And maybe you can, because you did that in an amazing way, explain to the audience the development of AI, like in a short time span, for people to understand why we are here where we are now in this current state. Because the one thing I know, that's because of the availability of storage space and computation power. And that's what makes it readily available. But there has been a lot happening before, and I think a lot of companies don't realize how much AI they're already using without even knowing, right? So
yeah.
Please take us on this little journey in time. You can start 30 years ago, that's fine.
Well, we can even start a little bit before, right? Now, it's really difficult always to say who was the first and who are the pioneers and this kind of stuff, right? But usually people quote precisely this person, Ramon Llull, from whom our university takes its name, as the first, the first person considering something like automated reasoning, right? His goal was trying to convert to Christianity the heathens, what he considered the heathens at the time. So for him, the people to be converted were Muslims, and he made very curious approaches for that time. That first thing is that if you want to convince somebody, first that you need to convince them. So he was trying to build arguments in favor of being Christian against being a Muslim in a rational way, which is pretty curious. Second thing this person was considering is that, okay, you should convince people that speak Arabic, maybe you should speak Arabic. And third, he prepared a system of, argumenting and replying all possible questions in a kind of an automatic way. So but that was in the 13th century. So that was really, really long ago. Actually, the name artificial intelligence is coined in 1956, right? In a famous, Dartmouth conference in which mathematicians, physicists, and electrical engineers, there were electrical engineers at the time, the name computer science was probably not yet truly coined. They came together because they wanted their systems and machines to perform tasks that other people would consider quote unquote human, right? And they found this very good name, which is artificial intelligence. And it's a very good name because it's so catchy, because it's got intelligence, right? So humans, we have this tendency to consider ourselves intelligent. So anything that is intelligent is because it's like a human-like, right? So an intelligent animal is an animal that does things that we consider intelligent, right? So we want a machine to do things like us. So that it's, for instance, describing a picture or processing a natural language, our natural language. I mean, dolphins probably or whales speak their own things, but we are not still able to or octopuses, right? That have been declared sentient beings, right? So that probably they have their own communication systems. We are not able, but human language, we try to do that, right? So they try to work out on these techniques. Now, the problem with artificial intelligence is that this is too good a name. And since it is a metaphor, because you're attributing human properties to a machine or something that is not human, this is always exciting people's imagination. This is something that somehow brings a lot of excitation. And this has happened a number of times. Actually, probably among the first famous applications, first one is a chatbot, right? Something conversational chatbot that was used to perform a certain psychiatric tests, right? It was like a what do you call this in English? Okay.
Say it in Spanish. Maybe I can translate.
No, it's. I mean, following on Freud's theory, psychoanalytic. It was doing some kind of a psychoanalytic approach through a chatbot, right? And apparently, he was able to cure some people, right? Mm-hmm.
But is that was probably based on a standard questionnaire, which they use a lot in the psychology and psychiatry.
That was it. So, and essentially, what it was doing, it was kind of finding out some keywords, right? So, okay. I mean, and that was 1966. So you can, as you can see, this concept of chatbot and natural language processing was already advanced at the time. If any computer scientist is around, the term regular expressions, right? So the thing worked on regular expressions. But okay. Now that was truly long ago. Right. So the thing is that this is a field of research which has generated a lot of expectations among people, and when they would see that the technology was not properly delivering, because probably, I mean, there was a nice result, but probably the rest of the technology was not mature enough just to be put in standard production. It was a matter of, say, of research, right? So then people would get rapidly disexcited, right? So that's what people call the winters of AI. And there have been very many of them. And then a new technology, a new methodology has come out, and then people got excited again, and so on and so forth. The point is that in parallel, computers have evolved a lot. So we have had access to more data, and we have had access to far more computing capacity. And this has allowed very many of the algorithms that had been devised at the time to be able to work properly, right? And have turned one part of this technology a mature one. So, for instance, if you have the camera on your smartphone probably has some kind of what we would call AI adjustments. Again, AI is a nice name. Maybe you could say cool math adjustments, but probably cool math is not as cool as artificial intelligence, right? So you would have this, you would have other professionals being helped, right, by some AI systems. But of course, we had the outburst of generative AI arriving to everybody, and now we are in another of these very high excitation and hype periods.
Yeah, and you said these high periods, but there's a whole generation that thinks AI, what we see now with OpenAI and Mistral and you name it, mm-hmm. that it's all new. And what they don't realize, it's actually, well, not, I wouldn't say quite old, but it has been, it's not the end, but it's sort of a moment in time where we can actually use it, but it's been around for a longer time. And that's, I think there's a whole generation that has no clue. So it's good to know that there's a lot of, have been a lot of scientists that have been working on this for a very long time, and probably in their career never saw the results of it in their working life.
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Yeah. Some of the key. Look, some of the key advancements of what we are seeing now are from the 80s. Okay, which is that's the time in which computers were more available to scientists, right? So it was easier to have a computer in your environment, so you could start say training machine learning, another very nice name, right? So you could gather some data, and then you could tune the parameters or some kind of complex mathematical structure as an artificial neural network, and you could start observing some results, right? So the say the basic algorithm on which AI, most neural network systems work today, which are variants of backpropagation, is from 1986, right? So, I mean, some of them have already seen it, but probably they are retired, right? So, but yeah, there's been a lot of work. Probably the turning point was around the 2010 era, in which we seem to be in this kind of eternal spring, instead of having summers and winters. Just because first, as I said, the amount of available data was large enough so that you could make this learning on sufficiently large systems, so that the results were robust enough to be put in production. So you could have fairly good, for instance, forecasts for some financial series, or forget about um, forget a little bit about stock exchange, right? Stock exchange, you can predict some things, but when you make real money is within non-predictable ones, right? But yeah, for instance, for a company, you could foresee some financial structures. For medicine doctors, you could also start to associate certain characteristics that could help the medicine doctor just to take a decision. So what you would start having were systems in credit score assessment. Right? So you could gather a number of data, and precisely based on your historical data, assess a little bit better, or assess well the risk of a certain person not giving back the money. So just so just because of this, there were very many systems in which an expert would have an AI, what we could call an AI assistant.
What then surprises me, if you think about this, right? You mentioned credit scoring. Now that is
Mhm,
an extremely hot topic in the European AI Act. That's
mhm,
considered a high risk system. Now, if you think about this, and the way and we're jumping to European AI Act, but if
mhm,
how AI is defined, machine learning is also part of it.
mhm,
Basically any algorithm that does something is considered AI. So, and you have to be transparent about it and classify it, etc. So, if
mhm,
you think about that, any and knowing it has been around for a long time, you wonder why only now the legislation comes in place, and not longer ago. Because earlier, I mean, because if you think about risk classification, that's basically the
mhm,
business of insurance companies. They take all these
mhm,
parameters. Some call it redlining. For car insurance, for instance, we know in this zip code
mhm,
there's a higher criminality, and we know then if you have a red car, the chances that it gets stolen or wrecked is higher.
mhm,
Blah 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 blah. So based on that, we profile, and then we give you a premium, and also based on
mhm,
the payment history. That is considered a high risk. Now all of a sudden they've been doing that for years, and all of a sudden it's high risk. If you think about that, it sort of it feels a bit. Although I'm pro the legislation, it's good, but it feels a bit weird if you dive into it that it's now about stuff that has been around for a very 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 long time, maybe as long as the AI has been around, and only now we're making legislation because we think it should be this and that. How do you view that? Because
Well,
when I found out it's sort of mind blowing.
okay, there's a change, right, in all this. Now, I mean, around any AI application, there's always people. Right?
True.
Seems that AI is something that is so automatic, but all AI applications have a customer, a user, a person from whom you want something or you want to do something. The difference here is, say first the amount of data you can gather from a person, and second the processing capacity, right? So because of this, probably we have gained an awareness on certain details that we have figured out that probably something we didn't like. I mean, why didn't we legislate? Because probably there was not that feeling that this was might be unfair. Okay, and this is something that the coming of artificial intelligence has of this massive AI. So AI everywhere, right? Um, so this deep learning everywhere, right? So this massive comeback has people made aware that probably there was something here. Now, people, there's very many people that just charge it on AI, right? So, oh, now I can get I can get profile because, of course, when everything is digitized, you leave much more data on yourself, right? So you have, so your digital footprint is richer than another footprint you may have, right? So out of this digital footprint, you can extract, if you want, more information about the person. And now we realize that maybe we are not comfortable with what can be done with this information. On the other side, so probably first thing, there's this awareness. Second thing is, maybe this is an opportunity. Why do I say so? I've heard people say, I mean, I was in a round table one day, and so that I don't want an algorithm to decide whether I will get a credit or not. And my thought was, okay, well, how did it work before, right? Well, it was not an algorithm. Well, let's wait. So you would have some person in the, say, in your bank branch, just gathering asking you some information, and then checking against some credit scoring tables that had been assessed by a number of statisticians somewhere, right? And had made some kind of decision. This is an algorithm. Maybe it was not as much computerized as it is now, but that was an algorithm. So the system was already in place. Now, what we can have now with these algorithms is that they are subject to be checked, right? So now, if we have a scoring algorithm, we may test it just to check that it is not sensitive to the data we don't want it to be sensitive. For instance, gender, right?
Or foreign names, or like we had in Holland,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
Yes. Well, in Holland, there was in the Netherlands, there was a very famous or notorious case about, some AI not working properly for some time, right? That even
Basically
made the
discriminating,
government, yeah, yes.
but
Hmm.
basically incriminating people because they had a foreign last name, and
Hmm.
saying that because of that they were high risk in maybe fraudulent actions. So they made a mistake, like many people make with the government, filling out a form and making a mistake in the form, or not doing something on time, and that sort of put the label criminals on them, and with a whole lot of problems coming behind it. Um, that
Hmm.
that was basically an algorithm out of control. But the problem was the people, because they were warned, and they didn't. The people who are running it, or the management, did not listen to the people who are saying this is a problem, this is a risk, we should not do this, we should change it or check it or
Hmm.
whatever. It was known, but people ignored it because this is our policy, we're blah, 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 being efficient, blah, 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 blah. And basically closing their eyes on the risks. And that's what the good thing about the European AI Act, it sort of forces you to open your eyes for the inherent risks that are most inherent risks that are there. So in that sense, it's a good thing. But it's correct what you say. It's basically the translation of something that was already there, but now it's automated. And the problem is that when a human does it, basically a human makes the decision. And in AI, basically there's an outcome. And so it's yes or no, because the algorithm says so. And that's where the problem and the risk is. Wait, okay, here it comes.
Wait. Yeah. No. Here we have to be careful. I mean, you're right. So there's a natural tendency just to dismiss responsibility and say, okay, that's what the algorithm said. I'm safe because that's the AI said that I should do this or I should not. Now, what the AI is putting in front of us is that we cannot renounce. We cannot give away our responsibilities, right? So we have to be more aware and feel more responsible than ever. Why so? Because after all, AI systems are and probably should without the probably and should remain assistants to people, right? This is something that is
augmenting people.
Augmenting people, yeah. This is something that is even said by the Pope, right? So, yeah,
not the first one I would go to, but okay. With regard to AI,
yeah, precisely, right? Probably the Christian Church the Catholic Church would say that the last ones that might worry about this, but the Pope is uttering a very clear message on that, right? Is that people should remain in the center, that this should remain a tool, it should be for the good of humanity. So, but it is I think this is to show, and this is a message that was delivered to the G7 leaders, right? He could have, he would have talked to about many other things, but he spoke about AI. So I think that this is really a proof that we have in hand something that is really challenging for the humankind at this point and for society. Yes, because somehow. Usually, people tend to defer their responsibilities. Actually, there's somebody reminded me of a certain circumstance. Apparently, it was in the Iraq War. There was some anti-aerial battery, right? That had information of some object coming. So apparently, what the AI said it was a missile. But in principle, there were enough evidences to the people manning the battery, right, the anti-aerial battery, that was a friendly plane. Now they shot and they put down the plane, which was a British plane, by the way, apparently, right? And the excuse for the soldiers was, the AI told me that this was some dangerous stuff. But the answer of the court or the military answer was, that's very well, but you were the responsible one, so you are responsible for the decision. And this is something that we have to keep in mind. So these are systems that that are here to help us, but we have to keep responsible on what we do. This is against human nature. Right, 99% of humans tend to lend responsibility away, right? But this is something we have to work on, because you cannot have. This is very simple. You can have one of your favorite generative AI system writing an email for you, but then you send it under your name. The contents are your responsibility, right? If you are, And you are accountable for what this thing said. Haven't you reread it? It's your fault.
And that's this is really interesting what you're saying now, because what I'm also working in an AI startup. What you see is all this agentic approach to AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where a lot of companies say, "Oh, we have agents for everything," and basically, my prediction is that a lot of companies will blindly jump into that and say, "Okay, let's build them," and basically replace people or have replace work that people are doing now, and they're basically taking humans out of the loop. And my prediction is that will cause a lot of problems. If you stack AI on AI on AI, no, it becomes a total black box, because these LLMs, they keep changing, keep being upgraded. And we know from experience that today I put in A through a certain protocol, and then the answer is B. Okay, B is correct. Thank you. Now the model is updated. I put in the same A in the same way, and the answer is B.5 or C. And we didn't change anything, but just the model was updated. And then you look at what was updated, and it makes no sense whatsoever why the answer should be different, because the content it's using is exactly the same. So here's the thing: if you put AI on AI on AI on AI, you sort of stack problem on problem on problem on problem. It is no way you cannot use AI in this stage to check on all of that, because it's stacking problems and cause and effect, and there's no way. You need to isolate them in order to understand where the problem comes from. So my prediction is it's gonna be big trouble for a lot of companies, although the AI Act forces you to make it transparent. So hopefully that sort of forces companies to do it step by step and understand how to manage it. Because that's what I think the other problem is. And the big tech is pushing so hard for the use of AI in every corner of your company that, first of all, they control everything after that, especially your cost base. But secondly, they don't take responsibility for the problems that will happen and occur. And they could be disastrous for your business. Or let's say if it's something in the defense industry, and it's use AI on AI on AI to detect an object, and a model gets updated. Well, they don't work with LLMs, I presume. So yeah, I think that's something we have no clue about. How to manage that.
You see, AI is a tool, right?
I know.
And
it's
should
not
be
the
kept
holy grail.
No, but I mean, it's you see, the problem with all these things are these kind of polarizations, and my fear a little bit with AI is that with this new overdose of AI, we will kind of come back to certain points, and people will get reluctant instead of embracing all the good things it is bringing, right? Problem is that okay, this is a technology which is a technology. I mean, this is a technological wonder. I mean, the fact that we are able to write, say, consistent text, right, out of the blue. I mean, this is something that has taken a lot of effort to humanity. Actually, it has been like the last. The last step in AI has been the capacity of generating and understanding moderately well text. I mean, large language models are really wonders, right, technologically. And for this, you have all this concept of being able to efficiently turn words into numbers. This is something which is called embedding, right? In a meaningful way, so that then you can exploit all this numerization and get these things. So getting something like a chat, like ChatGPT, that answers sensible things. I say sensible. I don't say true, right?
No,
Because
it seems coherent and it seems sensible, but it doesn't make it true.
Yeah, yes. Well, apparently the problem I read somewhere is that our brain is not as much able to check the truth, to look for the coherence of something. That's why we are so kind of mesmerized by ChatGPT answers, right? Because or by any other good LLM answers, because they look real, right? They look consistent. They no, but once you understand that what they write is not necessarily true, then you have a better grasp of the tool and you know how to use it. I mean, I don't remember if I took I made this example, but if you go to a carpenter shop, the carpenter will have a myriad of hammers, and will use each hammer in the proper way. So there's a hammer for certain type of nails, and there's a hammer for another type of nails, and you will never hammer a screw. Okay, so when you have
makes
tools.
sense.
Yeah, when you have tools and you have a trade, and you're good at your trade, you know how to use them, and you know how to make out the best of them, and that's what we have to learn about AI, right? So it's I mean, writing certain emails is no added value. May they be replacing people? Maybe, right? For instance, in Europe, we'll be lacking of workforce for number of things, right? So at a certain point, we may see that automation of certain tasks may make certain sense. It's so again, this can be a disaster or an opportunity. Actually, it's really fun because we have very many companies approaching us lately, right? Like, well, as a university saying, okay, I'm doing my strategic analysis, and I am doing my SWOT, and I don't know if to put it in threats or opportunities, right? So where should AI go, right?
It's interesting because I talked to a company and we had a similar discussion,
Mhm,
and they asked me the same question. It's like, yeah, because they say if we don't do something, it becomes a threat because other companies are doing something. But if we do something, it's an opportunity. I said first put it in threat, and that will put you in motion and to turn it into an opportunity. But if you're at it, um, put it in threat and give it the budget of an opportunity.
mhm,
So you get to how do you say that? Work against the threat and be
mhm.
ahead of it, and so that sort of helped them crush the problem. But if you think about AI as a threat, I think for a certain group of people, it will be a threat if you're not willing to be augmented as a knowledge worker.
Mhm,
Um, then you'll have a problem. But I see another thing. I see for people that, for instance, engineers that repair dishwashers or refrigerators or
mhm,
whatever, there's so many models around that I imagine a future where they have augmented reality glasses, VR glasses or AR
mhm,
glasses, which is connected to a database of all the technical drawings and spare parts and
mhm,
what have you, and basically telling them you need to unscrew this part,
mhm,
and doing the diagnostics with the person, guiding him or her through
mhm.
the machine to do it in the proper way and the most efficient way, and find the part that needs to be replaced. And then basically, say, okay, it's that part, and it's ordered.
Yeah, but
That,
for instance,
that
expert systems were born. I mean, were born to try to understand in airplanes what could be the cause of a certain problems you might be experienced, right? Because of the complexity of the machine, you could have a number of causes, right? So going upflow, I mean, in the cause analysis, this could help the pilot just to tell it. That's from the 70s, right? So
Yeah,
it's
that's the
one of
decision
the.
tree with all the
Yeah,
manuals. Go to the next one.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I remember the
yeah,
folders in the Boeing 747.
yeah, yeah. So um, these were things that had started to be automated this way, and of course they are this kind. I mean, they help you in this augmentation. Look, this is like the calculator, right? The pocket calculator. Okay, I don't want to be augmented. I don't. I will keep doing my sums by hand. excellent. I mean, if you want, you can do it, but you can use the calculator once you know how to use it. So, okay, in principle, this is something which is reliable, and your sum will be correct, and everybody will be happy, and will make you save probably some time. If you want to keep fresh in mind, do some sums by yourself from time to time, right? Because this is also an effect sometimes can be seen from having, say, too much help in taking some decisions, right? Is that you lose a little bit of your training. So somehow, what AI so AI is kind of a mirror in which humanity can be reflected in very many ways. First, maybe we are starting to discover that we had a number of biases that we dislike, that we deeply dislike, in terms of racism, in terms of gender bias, in terms of very many things. And we somehow we kind of we're getting along with them until we see them appearing. Somebody told, I mean, these language models, basically they are gender biased, because if you say doctor here, it assumes it's a man. That's no problem of the LLM. It's a problem of the data it's been fed with. And of course, the data has been fed with, and the data has been fed with is the data that society, right? So, hello, it is your mirror.
Can I ask you something about this?
Yes.
I had a whole discussion with someone, a technical person, about bias in LLMs. And that person said, no, we need to take out the bias. So I said, okay, so you're going to put in not real data in an LLM in order to take out the bias, or you take out real data in order to take out the bias. Yes. I said, okay, so basically you're making it worse. Because you're creating another bias. It's wishful thinking, because this is a societal problem. This is the data that's online. So if you don't like that, you need to start with the problem, not with the data, because we will keep feeding it that data, because that's the actual world. If you don't like it, well, do something about that, not about the model. That's a representation of what the world is like. And I understand you don't like it, but, or you filter it at the end, or you put a little note underneath there. There might be, and doing that is also dangerous, because in the medical field, for instance, if you compare medical systems, I had a discussion with someone from medical field. All these medical systems, you have these big American systems that are now are being implemented in European hospitals. If they would use the data they gather in American hospitals of American patients and put that on Europe or on Africa or on Asia, you would see that there would be a big problem, because the diseases and the genetics in Africa and Asia, it's totally different. And that's one of the problems that we had in Europe with all the refugees, not making a political standpoint here, but that we didn't have that, and we don't have that data about the diseases that they have in our system. So we have no clue what the problem is. Right? The doctors are being educated what they see here in Europe and in America, more in America. And so it's like an example with the sickle cell disease, which is people with a dark skin could have that. It's in their DNA. It's genetics. But if you don't treat those people, if you never see that, you have no idea what it is when you see someone with that problem. It's statistically, it's not the first thing you would assume.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't know. You're not being trained on this. And the data is also not trained on this. So if you don't like, for instance, that European hospital data leaves out, for instance, Asians or Asian diseases, well, it makes perfect sense, because that is the reality. There's not, it's not predominantly the group that is here. And I'm not talking about Asians is random. It's not I'm not trying to target anyone. But the problem is, if you talk about bias in data, sometimes the bias makes sense and is actually relevant. And if you start taking that out, there's people saying, oh, I don't like that because it's racistic or whatever. Then you create a new problem, and at some point you can't correct it anymore, and things go south because of it.
Well, or you can read it the other way around. For instance, if you're in Europe and you get a patient from Asian origin, probably you as an MD, you are not trained to possible diseases they have, but then one of these systems can tell you, just be careful because this person, right, because of his genetic
His
origin,
origin.
may have may have these diseases that you are not used to meet, right? So check on
Ah,
this.
but now comes the problem.
Mhm,
We're trying to be so politically correct that we cannot register, or it's, to what purpose should we register someone's origin? Is that relevant?
mhm,
And here it comes. It is actually relevant, not because we don't like it, but because we
mhm,
want to help the person properly. And
mhm,
but it's a problem because people would say, no, that's racism. You can't say the person has a dark skin or is Asian or Caucasian or whatever. Doesn't matter.
mhm.
It's not.
But yeah,
So we try the political correctness, which I understand in some terms, but it also creates new problems with these models.
we have to be. You see, you have to understand better the purpose and show ethics in the purpose, right? And be sure of our, I mean, if we consider a race as something, I mean, what do we want race for, right? On information on race, right? So probably on certain things or on certain activities should not be relevant. On others, it should, right? And so this is again bringing, so most of AI is bringing challenges to people on top, and is bringing challenges onto society. That's why it is such an exciting problem, right? Because now we have to reflect in which cases we need to have certain information and which not, and we should we be able to check this against misuse? Well, the problem is that there's a lot of people with some tendency of misuse, right? So probably yes, these things should be checked, but for certain purposes, certain variables. So when you do data science, you know very well that certain variables are relevant to the problem, and those are the one to be kept. Okay,
Um, yeah,
so
yeah, I agree.
uh, mhm. And that's what we have to understand as a society. The thing is that here we is, I mean, actually, all these AI systems are also in social networks, and the way we started consuming information and the things, they have led to this kind of polarization because we tend to be in our own bubbles, and we look for this kind of reinforcement uh, reinforcement of our beliefs and all this stuff, right? But okay, before, so people would read some newspapers. I mean, if you're a right-winged person, you would read a newspaper, and if you were a left-winged person, you would read another newspaper, right? So this thing already happened, right? And you would trust some, and uh, and you would trust more one things rather than others. Now, but now that the overflow information just it's but but eventually you could go and buy the other one. Now it seems like if you had more difficulties to get the information from the other side, right, which is pretty contradictory. So again, whose response? We can look for a lot of responsibilities, but how can we act just to prevent this? And it's in the in people's self consciousness and people's awareness on the problem. So that's why we start to be more aware of these kind of things, right? It's like if we had a demon, right, a computer demon, it's just in the back of our mind that needs to be all the time saying, okay, mm, uh, just check that this information makes sense, or what would on the other side what another person would say of this information, and try to see what is correct or not. So probably we will see a kind of development of, and we already see the things like fact checkers, right? And probably a certain degree of awareness on a certain level of population. The more aware we make the population about, and we make society about these kind of problems, without scaring people, right? Because we can, I mean, we can always play the scare argument. Oh, this is will be very bad for us, right? But then we will lose all the benefits, and actually it has a lot of benefits with it. But if we are not making people aware of what these things are, and that of course is about education and is about dissemination, we will hardly I mean, we may easily fall into some into the problems, as you were mentioning for the company, right? So they stack AI on AI on AI, and at the end you don't have the grasp or where the problem was, because you changed a certain component, right? Now it's when you have mechanical machines, you seldomly go and change one component by another one, right? So you don't go to your microwave and say, "Oh, I will change today the timer," right? So you change the timer and you start working with the micro. This is something you don't do with this with your car. Okay, so okay, I change today. I will change the engine, right? So I got my new engine, the new engine for this week, right? Update. I will update the engine and start going, right? So mechanical stuff is more stable. Software is not, right, from this
Anyway, if you
point
talk
of
about
view.
cars, that Tesla does that. They basically send updates to the software
Yeah, yeah.
remotely, and
Actually,
you
you
have. Sorry, actually, yeah.
and you pay for this. What you pay is for the software. The hardware is almost the same for all cars. So all cars are the same. The difference of what you're paying is the software, right?
Yeah, and basically, and you're giving them data because everything you do is being uploaded and used
Hmm.
for training their AI. People don't
Hmm.
realize that basically, if you drive a Tesla, you're training the Tesla software.
Hmm. But you may be okay with that, right? But it's your
I have
decision.
no
Yeah.
problem.
Okay, you could
I don't have
say.
a problem with that.
Mhm. I don't have a Tesla, but um, in any case, I mean, you can say, "Oh, that's good because that will revert on me because I have this car. If the system gets better with my data, so but you should be conscious about what your data is used for, and the company that is using your data is to be trustful."
Yeah,
Okay.
and talking, we talked about uh, data, and now this morning, as I said before we started recording, let me look it up on my phone. This morning, I saw a post of someone, and that was about the patent landscape on generative AI. And I'm not. It's crazy what happened, but it says also something about the scientific publications. And it said here that more than 75,000 scientific publications were published on generative AI between 2014 and 2023. And basically 45% of that was published in 2023. Now, and then if you look at the companies that have the patents or the patent applicants, there's three American companies, and the rest, the big ones, are Chinese or no, Chinese, and then inventors. US is in there, but China is like by far the biggest. Now, that if there's one thing I see, we try and follow from this AI startup. We try and follow what's happening in the market in terms of scientific developments and technology, and we try to keep up. And here's the weird thing: you cannot. And in the beginning we started looking at, oh, okay, this is new. Oh, this is interesting. And you look at it, and it's useless. Sorry for the scientists. So how do you? These amounts are vast. It's crazy, and the quality is not always up to par. How do you manage you from a scientific point of view and teaching your students? How do you sift through that huge amount of information in one small, not a small topic, in one topic, in one area? And that's just one. There's a lot more. It's just one picked out. How do you manage that? How do you do that? How do you judge if it's useful and not waste time on bullshit? Maybe. Sorry
The
for the people who write these papers.
the answer is you don't, right? Because you cannot either. look, the say the scientific ways or the way science was working in terms of publishing, having publishing in journals, having peer reviews, and all this stuff. This was a system that was very well devised when you had, say, moderately large number of scientists, and that were publishing maybe 1, 2, 3 papers per year. So you would have enough time, and then you would send, so you would have some results, you would write them, then you would send them to the journal. The journal would start to a couple of reviewers or 3. Those reviewers would even try to reproduce your results, right? So there's a point of reproducibility, and then basically when everything was correctly checked, the result would be published. Now, because the system was working, people decided that the number of publications was something relevant to assess about the academic quality of a person, right? So if you have 20 papers, you're better than if you have 10 papers. In general,
saying nothing about the
right?
actual quality about the research and the paper itself.
Saying nothing about anything, right? Well, if you had, for instance, your papers published in what you would call a good journal, that would say, oh, so this person apparently is making relevant contributions, and oh, this person is even cited by other scientists. So that is an indicator that his work is relevant enough so that it gathers the interest of other people. So that is a system that when you maintain the width or the size of the community moderate, right, and the publishing rhythm moderate, may make sense. Of course, you have what you would call trends. So sometimes there is a topic which is trendy, right? So people tend to make more research on this topic. Why? Because they know that it will gather more interest from the mates, right? But you've seen this throughout history. Now this topic, at some point the scientists were discussing about electricity, and there were a number of them doing that, right? So people would look at electricity. So it's kind of natural because there's an interest. Then there is another thing, is that if you enter a field when still there are some kind of low-hanging fruits in terms of research there, you can gather them, and then it's easier than when all low-hanging fruits have been collected, there are only the really tough problems are left. So if you devote your time on the tough problems, probably you won't get as many publications. So there was something that people like more senior and that should not rely that much on the number of publications for their positions, they might try start looking at, right? So, but when the size was moderate, that could be good indicators. You can always have criticisms like, there's a very famous, the standard quote is, there's a very famous mathematician, Werner Riemann, German, I think, that he only published 13 papers in his life, right? Of course, each paper is a branch of mathematics, right? So he's one of the most relevant mathematicians in modern history, Werner Riemann, okay? But still, he only would have 13 papers. Probably he would not fit into the modern standards. But if you don't have that many people, you may understand a little bit better the impact, right? Problem is that the system is not scaling properly. First, because of course, if you know that you will be assessed on the number of publications you have, then you try to have more and more publications, right? Second, if you know that you will be assessed also on the number of citations you have, since this is a human activity and probably ideally would be close to meritocracy, but in the end, it's still, you see all human biases around, so you will start dealing with your friend. Okay, I cite you if you cite me. So you start seeing this kind of
I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Uh, Basically, yes. And okay, so in the end, in the end, the thing exploded. Um, what is fashionable? Generative AI, right? So very many people need to prove that they have a CV on, they have a curriculum in generative AI, right? You need to put forward a number of articles following this, and you have to compete with other groups that probably are generating as many papers. So essentially, this had an exponential growth that basically has makes little sense, right? Probably there are. It is hard to find a real breakthrough. There are very few of these real breakthroughs. Actually, it's fun because the main the main developments in large language models or in language technology, they were coming from automatic translation, right? And they were not published even in journals; they were published in conferences, right? So, for instance, a famous paper defining the transformers is something that was that came out in a conference, but then people realized the power of the thing, right? So it's a paper mainly by Google engineers, right? So and it was 2017, right? It was in science terms is not so long ago. But of course, now if you want to have a name and you want to be read, you have to put the right words, generative AI. Otherwise, you're kind of set aside. And it's very difficult to find the new things. But of course, if you have a certain pressure that you will not get, or you will not maintain your position, or you will not have a proper assessment if you are not publishing on one of the relevant topics, then you're doomed, because what you will try to do is to get a number of papers. So probably we have destroyed somehow the system, the scientific system. It's been already some time that certain people say, okay, we should stop assessing scientists on the number of publications and the number of citations. This is very well quoted in something called the Dora Declaration from San Francisco, right? So people can Google it up. And they will, even ChatGPT makes a good summary of it. So I checked. So you can check what that is and means, and have an idea that probably the assessment. But what you see is that, for instance, in China, there are very many academic institutions. There are very good scientists there, but they're trying to push themselves and publish. And you're measured on the number of patents, the number of papers, and everything. But again, it is really difficult to come with new results. Talking about China, but you have the same thing in India, and you have the same thing in Europe, and you have the same thing in the US. Actually, the fun part of that, if you allow me one thing, is that probably the real breakthroughs are not taking that much place in academia right now, but in the private sector, right? It's like pharma. Drug development is much more advanced in the private sector, probably, that essentially because you need certain means that are not anymore affordable to universities, right? Or to certain research centers. Maybe the largest ones can afford certain things, but not the regular size ones. So, and one other thing that we have to remember is that more powerful than a patent is the industrial secret. You can ask Coca-Cola about it.
They have not patented Coca-Cola.
The formula is a secret. A patent
it's public. It's open.
It's public and expires. And when the patent expires, you're gone.
Makes it. Yeah, that's like what
Yes.
happens in the medical industry.
Yeah. Or what happened to Lego with the bricks?
I didn't.
Lego bricks were patented. So at a certain point, when the patent expired, other people could have bricks without paying Lego. But since these Danish people were smart, they had like evolved their business model into something else, right? Just to keep the company alive, right? So and they have manifestly succeeded, right?
Yeah,
But mhm,
that's what I see. If you look at all these publications, okay, there's nothing. They built on publicly available things or information. I'm not saying they patented, but a lot of times it just maybe on paper it makes sense theoretically, but in practice it's you see a lot of people commenting on LinkedIn. Oh, there's a new paper, and then they say, okay, try to reproduce this. It doesn't work, or I can't get it to work, and then they don't get any answers. And I see that happening more and more and more. But the problem is we're wasting time on reproducing something that is not relevant. And I'd love to have a system or a process by which you can sift through all the publications and make, in Dutch we would say make chocolate out of it. So make it make sense and sort of rank what you should study and try, and the rest just put it on a backlist or don't use it, because it's a waste of your time and your headspace. But I haven't found a system or any logic to do that, and I don't think we can exclude based on a country or a certain university, because I have seen stuff that from people that were not affiliated to university, but just they made brilliant papers, solving little problems and explaining how they did that. And I'm like, yeah, this is what we need. These little nuggets of knowledge.
mhm. But yeah, you see, you can look, and there are what they call AI assistants, just to assess if a paper is correct, because they kind of look at the logics or they check the statistics. So you have you can have AI assessing AI papers, which I find fun at a certain, but it's not what you are actually really looking for, because we are not
But
having AI systems testing or making the
no,
full test, right?
and Xavier, if you have an AI testing an AI paper, if things are correct, I'm pretty sure that the ones writing the AI paper use another system to make sure that when people use an AI system to check if it's correct, that it's actually correct. But that doesn't mean it works, right?
Well,
The
yeah.
application of the theory of the idea of how to build something. So
Yeah, well, the
you
thing
know what I
is,
mean?
yeah. Well, this is what I love from from the idea of generative adversarial technologies, right? The adversarial networks, So there is a system trying to build your picture, your image, or your whatever, and then you have the famous discriminator that needs to tell you whether this was generated or belongs to the original set, right? So the better the discriminator, the better the system, right? Because they fight against the other. Actually, it's fun because I'm running a project on detecting hate speech, right? And of course, former Twitter, now X, hate speech sometimes is very obvious because insults are more open. There's no filtration. But then you go to a network like TikTok, right? And in TikTok, there is a much stronger controller on what you write. Essentially, some words are not allowed, and they have a better check. So what you see is that hate speech somehow mutates and is kind of using other ways, right? So I'm living instead of killing, right? So you see how people start devising the ways just to hack the system. So this is this kind of hacking mind that we humans have. And it's fun because we are looking at it in Spanish, but of course, Spanish depends very much on the country, especially in Latin America, on the country you're looking at. And this project is being run by a Colombian girl. At a certain point, he said, "Okay, I could essentially classificate some of the comments whether they had speech or not. But when I got to certain countries, as Chile, for instance, or as Mexico, I didn't quite get very well because they were using proper slang words that if you're not a local, so people are. It's curious because people are hacking the system through locality, right? the global system is hacked through locality, which I find it, well, I find it, I don't know if worrying, but curious at least. Right?
Well, it's actually a good thing because it makes us aware of the actual cultural differences. I mean, and it's not.
Mhm,
It has a reason that there are language models, large language models, popping up in on specific languages or dialects like Gaelic or
mhm,
Basque or whatever, because
mhm,
the some words might be similar, but other words totally different, different meaning, different sound.
mhm,
Um, and you need to be able to pick that up and do something with it, and not
mhm.
having people
Well,
adapt to another language. So I think it's a good thing. It makes
yeah, that's true.
companies
But
and governments aware.
yeah, the thing is, of course, just to train a large language model, you need a lot of documentation. So again, minority languages don't have as much documentation. Okay, so probably this is posing, and of course, again, this is like this is like rare diseases. And so you often see that large pharma companies are not researching on rare diseases just because there is there are
No
not enough
market.
potential customers. There's market is not large enough for that, right? So
Exactly.
essentially, those are so since we already gain an awareness about this, and large language models can be a very nice way to preserve cultural differences. Okay, because when you say, okay, this person just died and language died, I mean, okay, probably the first thing it's probably we should look that the language is not dying just because the person is dying, but foster more people to talk about it. But we could preserve good part of our cultural heritage through using language models, right? But then we need to gather the sufficient amount of information on these languages just to keep them in our heritage. So you see, there's a lot of, I mean, there are systems that are giving us a lot of very good opportunities. But the thing of AI is that it's something which is really, really powerful, right? Because of the capacity it has about finding patterns that may escape our pattern matching abilities. It can do very many things, right? But somehow it has, since it can do very many things, we can use it for the good and the bad. Sorry to be that simple, right? We have to keep active to use it for the good, right? And we have to have militant on that.
I agree. And how do you view, if you look ahead and into the future, what are we looking at? And I'm not going to say 10 years; it's too far away. We can't imagine. But what about 5 years? What are we looking at? What are going to be, in your opinion, from an academic perspective, where are we going to see the actual game changers, where it's going to have a huge impact on society? I see a lot of things that are okay. It's going to help. It's going to augment, but it's not going to be that different. But I imagine there are some spaces that are going to be very different, having a huge impact on society for good, I hope. But also, I understand for bad it will also happen.
Okay, what I basically see is probably will get more used. For me, there are two things. The first one is what were these AI systems that like decision support systems for professionals? We will continue to see their development, right, in the financial, etc., etc. So that is one of them. The second, for me, the second point that we will see is that we will get more used to like the writing assistants or the copilots and the core things, right? So you will have more assistance when writing some kind of stuff. Okay, yes. as a teacher, I can tell you that I can see when my students are using ChatGPT or any other language model, right? So it's blatant, right? You see it there. Okay, there are the really dumb ones that don't even erase that. Do you have any more question or and so some of the
At the end.
some even forget this at the end, right? So that, yes, I have another question. Thank you. So that was the
So
so
good.
that's the yeah, that's too bad. Yeah. So, but probably we'll have the opportunity to teach these people that essentially that's not the way to use it. So let's take the opportunity to let them figure out. Okay. And then others is it's video. So we'll get this kind of standard messages, and when we will get used to that, probably there's again we will see the branch for creativity coming in, right? And the tools for creativity coming in. So you will have this standard text, and probably the good thing of the standard text is that will help you with legibility, because since the structure is so fixed, you will read very quickly, or you will know where the basic where the important points are in the message. So I think that we will see this kind of co-helping, this augmentation in some kind of everyday tasks, right? Which is
Can I ask you one?
what?
Can I ask you
Yeah,
one
sure.
question about this?
Yes.
You're an educator. What I see in kids in high schools, and at least in the Netherlands, but I hear this from other countries as well, that the more kids are using computers and playing online games and read less and do less themselves, um, and that goes for the teachers too, that their capabilities in reading and writing and basic calculus, just doing math in your head or even writing it down, has been
Hmm.
going down the drain drastically. And it's the same if you look at using your phone for navigating. We have a whole generation that has no clue what the layout of a city is because they use Waze or Google Maps to navigate through a city or anywhere else. And if it doesn't work, they have a problem. They have no clue. Um, so what I see is that our mental or intellectual capabilities are, of course, it's being augmented by AI, but by the use of all these digital devices, it decreases. So at some point, we need AI to actually function because we're not. So my point is, isn't it a, and that's suggestive, I understand that, but isn't it a
Hmm.
huge risk to have AI help you writing an email or a letter or whatever? Sure, it's easier, but if you have never done it in another way, the day it doesn't work, you're just not capable of writing something on your own. And that is a problem because I think, and it's not based on science, but I think part of a creative process is that your brain has to do something. And if your brain is trained to do something, then you can connect certain dots, and that's a creative process that
Hmm.
it's logic or illogical thinking, but the thinking process is then not there. It's AI is doing it for you. So my point is, isn't AI making us stupid? And I'm talking about the kids going to school, using it, and then coming out of school, going to study, and they sort of lack something. Isn't it killing creativity? Suggestive,
That's a
I know.
risk, and that's a risk, and we have to keep aware in that sense. But it can also be a tool. Just imagine the calculator. Do you remember how to make a sum, pen and paper?
Actually, when I was in high school, we had calculators, and our math teacher, up to the final exams, only in the final exams we could use the calculator. For everything else, we were not allowed to use the calculator. And at the time, we cursed her for doing that. But when I went to university, and I went to university with two other classmates of mine, we were the only ones of the whole hundreds of students who could actually do math in our head and basically had an answer before everybody was doing it on the calculator, and we were done before everybody else. So
Mhm.
if I look back on that, we said, "Oh, you're stopping progress," but she actually taught us how to think and how to understand how to solve a math problem without a machine. And then if you have a machine, it only makes it easier, but you can actually check if you did it correctly. You understand the answer, how you got there, or how the machine got there. And to be honest, in hindsight, I'm really grateful for that. And I think that should be a way of teaching kids, okay, this is how it works. You can call it old school, but this is how the process works. If you understand the process, then it's fine to use technology. If you don't understand the process, you use technology, it's a black box. It's not, but then for that person, it's a black box. And I think it limits your capabilities of thinking and creative thinking. But that's it's an opinion. It's not a scientific fact.
But
maybe it is, but I don't know it.
I mean, I'm not an expert in education, but my feeling is that you already gave the answer, right? I mean, these are tools, so people need to know how these tools work, and they should learn it in school. But what is important are the reasoning and the thinking patterns. And from this, we should reinforce maybe certain subjects. I mean, math is key. Language knowledge is key because it's the enabler for very many things. So, and probably philosophy, right? So
that's thinking.
Yeah, that's thinking.
And I think history is really important. But if you teach kids about the process and how you ask questions and how you get proper information, then why are we teaching them to remember things by heart like years, which are totally irrelevant for right now? And if they want to know it, they can look it up. Just give them a reliable source and they'll get the information. So teach them how to find the information, not learn it by heart. Teach them the process. And I think that's far more interesting and applicable in everything.
Yeah. And for instance, if you want to teach people coding, one nice thing is this language model says that the code to perform this routine is this one. You utter the code. First question, is this correct? Explain why. And what would you change?
Right?
The model. So there's an active. Yeah. And you may ask the model, or you may not, right? So but you have to put people in charge.
I understand, but to put people in charge, they need to understand the process, and if they haven't, they don't understand, they're not capable of doing the process, of handling the process themselves. I think we're educating a generation that is later on in life not capable of managing the process. And then we have a huge problem, in my opinion, because that's when AI systems become dangerous. If the people don't understand the process and can't do stuff themselves, can't check if the model actually is performing the right things in the right way.
I agree completely. Right, so this is something. This is one of the points where we should be actively militant. Right, it's not that you are to ban technology, but you have to make sure that people understand what they are doing,
and that they have the basic skills.
Yes, and coming back to the basic skills, those are thinking. Yeah, so this is the
So we should be in charge of the education system in Europe.
Well, I mean, there's really capable people, and I know that this is a topic that relevant people are reflecting on, and the thing is, what is the feeling of parents regarding these things, right? So, I mean, how do we actively envisage parenthood, right? Because, this is a matter of schools. This is clear. But this is something that you can also do at home, and how you promote your children reflecting. Right? So this is important. How do critical thinking is the point, right?
I agree, but a lot of the parents they're not. This is the problem. They don't understand the AI themselves, and they use some of it. But and they think, oh, this is handy. It enhances me, makes my life easier. And I think that because generation after generation has been, the basic skills have been decreasing the capability of performing them. So they're not able. I see a lot of parents that are not able to help their kids with their homework because they have absolutely no clue, because they changed the way to do calculus, basic calculus. It's the same, but they changed the way to do it. So they're lost. And it makes no sense, because what was wrong with the old way? Nothing, but someone thought there was something better. And there's this tendency of we always have to change, but sometimes something is good, just you don't have to change it. It's a waste of time and money. And I think the other problem is that the teachers that are there, especially the younger ones, they're from a generation that didn't learn properly. I see when my kids went to school, I had a whole discussion with, in Dutch, we have this crazy thing where if you write it's not crazy. If you write a city or the name of a river or the name of a country, you do that with a capital letter. You start it with a capital, right? So then you have two subjects, and the same teacher in elementary school is giving that. If you have language, you have to write it with a capital letter. But if you're in geography, well, it doesn't matter. So, and I told him, you're fucking up my kid's brain, because if you give him an A in geography because he had got all the cities right, but no capital letters, and then you give him a bad grade in Dutch because he didn't write, or she didn't write the city names with a capital letter, you're going to confuse this kid. It makes no sense. So, and they just don't know how that works, and I think that's part of, they never learned. They're from a younger generation, and they think it's okay. It doesn't matter, but it does matter. It's not the fact that it's a capital, but it's how the brain works. And you need to be consistent with children, otherwise it's, they get lost. And I think that's part of the problem in education system. One day you use a calculator, the other day you don't. It doesn't matter. No, either you do or you don't. Because
you need systematics. The thing is,
exactly.
I mean, the thing with education is probably we forget the quality of education in the past, right? And at a certain point, people were only taught how to make certain sums and how to write certain things without a critical thinking. Now, I think that at a certain point that we were in a period in which critical thinking became something important in the school. But maybe yet we haven't grasped well how this is to be fostered. Right, so we all quote reading about as something which is relevant, which of course it is, right? But you see, one of the jokes I always make is that if you were at the beginning of the 19th century, reading the classics was simpler than if you are than now, because you have added classics all over the 20th century, right? So at the end of the 19th century, you didn't have to read the number of authors that we think that are capital. Probably you would have added some from the 19th century that now we have forgotten, but
and there's another thing. If you look at classics from the 19th century, some of the writers are cancelled because they are now considered, not woke or whatever. So the list is also decreasing again for maybe the wrong reasons. But maybe you're talking about the critical thinking. Maybe there's actually a huge opportunity here for academics. And because if I think about it, yes, critical thinking is a human skill. But I wouldn't be surprised if we would be able to use AI to teach people, to guide them in critical thinking processes. Because if there's one thing you could use an LLM for, is to take reasoning apart in small steps. So asking the questions in between, why this or that, and then giving them feedback on what they could have used in terms of the reasoning, arguments, pro or con or whatever. So much better than a person would do, because that person would be biased with his or her own opinion. That's part of the problem with teaching. And you could take out that bias out of an LLM, because it just gives you pro and con. There is no bias.
I agree with you. I mean, you see, again, AI is, I mean, we see users that are really powerful to enhance. Exactly. I mean, because it can, I mean, you can enhance critical thinking. It can help you doing very many things. And actually, our problem is the use we give it. Again, right? It's the same thing. It's the same. Yeah, people are crucial, and then people principles and people ethics and people's morale. To me, it's more a matter of morale than, I mean, it's very hard to define ethics as general good for humanity, right? Everyone that does it from a, if you want, a very Western perspective, right? But still, yeah. I mean, what things that are manifestly allowed in the US are not manifestly allowed in Europe, regarding, for instance, if you look at the GDPR or whatever, right? So we are Western culture, all the same, but still we see things, our feelings on what can be done or not are really, really different, right? And so it's a morale. It's a matter of what we assume that it is correct in our society, or things that are correctly, and probably in China this is perceived in a completely different way, right? So because this has to do with the way the individuals have a conscience of themselves with respect to the group, etc., right? So there are very many implications that we still need to understand. But that it is clear that having people thinking, not many people are prone to think or like thinking, right? This is something that if you look at the large part of humanity, I mean, they're quite happy with doing kind of normal things. That's why we should aware them the importance, so that they start also to move right into this, because they are perfectly capable of that. They just maybe not aware, or they don't see, or they are clearly moved by very simple claims, right? This is good, this is bad. So probably this is a debate that should embody a little bit more the society, right?
Yeah. Xavier, if I could ask you one last question, and if you could give an advice to CEOs or boards of directors of companies now, probably are bothered by FOMO, fear of missing out. So they're instructing their people to, you know what I mean. They're instructing their people, oh, we need to do something with AI. That's a very common remark now. What would from your point of view, from an academic worldview, but then again, your worldview is also very realistic. So it's not just academic, in my opinion. What would your advice be to those boards or directors or managers or whatever, to say, okay, where do we begin?
Okay, there are two very important things for them. The first one is understand what AI is. Right? So first get some AI literacy. I mean, you don't need to be able to train the deepest of the neural networks, right? Or to build an LLM out of yourself, but understand what AI is, what it does, and what it does not. Okay? And the second,
what the risks are.
Yeah, and what the risks are. And the second thing is, AI is not just because. What are the problems in your organization? What do you want to achieve? And once you have answered to this question, see if AI can help you to this goal. Right? So the driver should be your company needs.
And not because it's hip and happening.
Nope. I mean, not because you're. I mean, this is not keeping up with the Jonases, right? I mean, not because your neighbor is doing it. Maybe you may use it, but it makes no sense, right? So
I agree.
try to
The
avoid that.
shareholders might be asking. Exactly.
Yeah.
Xavier, thank you very much. I really enjoyed our conversation, and it's very nice to see and to hear an academic taking a practical look on the world, and not only a theoretical one. Because I think the students should be very happy with you, because they actually learn what happens in the real world, not just on paper or in the academic world. So thank you for that, and I will share the paper with the patents and the papers that was published with the numbers. It's really interesting, and I will add it to the post so people can look it up. Thank you very much, Xavier, and we'll meet again.
Thank you very much, Zoran, and yeah, we'll meet again and we keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.